There's a real sense of anticipation building as we look ahead. In just over a week, actually, Saturday, May 17th, the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland kicks off.
It really is a key moment every year, isn't it? Sort of sets the direction.
It does, and anyone who's seen the agenda knows it's pretty packed. A lot to get through.
Absolutely. It's based on all these detailed reports, proposals coming before the assembly.
Exactly, and that's why we've been immersing ourselves in the documents, that big PDF, the volume of reports 2025.
That hefty file, yeah.
We've been trying to pull out the key things, the stuff that really feels important as the church gets ready for these big discussions. Think of this as maybe your shortcut.
A guide through the highlights, yeah. And the one report that kind of anchors everything, the one that really shapes the conversation, it's the Assembly Trustees report.
Right. That's the main driver.
It touches on the fundamental health, the direction of the church, and its findings often influence how you look at all the other reports.
Okay, so let's get right into it then. As we've been reading all this, there's this one big question that just keeps surfacing, doesn't it? It feels like an undercurrent.
What's that?
Is the Church of Scotland facing, terminal decline? Or is there potential for something else, like a miracle, a real turnaround?
That's a heavy question, but it's definitely the one many people are asking, I think.
It is. It reflects the challenges, which are very real, but also, the faith that's still there.
And the reports, well, they give us a lot of data, a lot of points to actually think about that question seriously, thoughtfully.
Absolutely. Okay, there's so much here. Maybe we could start by looking outwards first. The church's connections, relationships with other churches, other denominations.
That seems like a good place to begin.
Yeah.
The reports actually highlight something really significant coming up. 2025.
Oh, yeah.
It's the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea.
Wow, 1700 years.
Yeah.
Back in 325 AD.
Exactly. That council was so fundamental in defining, core Christian beliefs, the whole idea of a unified Christian faith. It's a reminder of the deep history, the shared roots.
A real anchor point in history. And it seems the Church of Scotland is still very active in talking with other denominations, building on that shared basis.
Definitely. You've got the Columba Declaration with the Church of England.
Right.
There's talk of a potential joint declaration with the United Reformed Church, the St. Andrew Declaration with the Scottish Episcopal Church, and the St. Margaret Declaration with the Catholic Bishops' Conference in Scotland.
That's quite a network of relationships.
It is. And the reports emphasize that what binds them is the shared apostolic faith, that core belief system that exists underneath all the different traditions and ways of doing things that have grown over time.
Finding the common ground.
Yeah. Despite the differences in how faith gets expressed.
And it's not just UK-based, is it? The church is part of wider international groups, too.
That's right, like the World Communion of Reformed Churches and also the Conference of Protestant Churches in Europe, the CPCE.
So what's the real benefit of being involved internationally like that?
Well, it connects the church to a much wider family, globally and across Europe. It allows for collaboration on, issues that go beyond borders, tackling global challenges together.
Makes sense.
But the reports do also raise a point. The world's changed a lot since some of these bodies started. The Church of Scotland itself has changed, so there are questions being asked about the vision for this international stuff. How best to use resources there.
Right, prioritizing. Where do you put the energy and the money? That ties into the bigger picture of capacity, doesn't it?
Exactly.
And speaking of international focus, the reports mention the ongoing solidarity with Palestinian Christian communities.
Yes, and advocating for peace in the Middle East. It talks about the work of mission partners there and financial support for EAPPI.
EAPPI, that's the Ecumenical Accompaniment Program.
In Palestine and Israel, yeah. They send international volunteers to provide a protective presence, witness human rights issues.
So it's a very practical kind of engagement.
Very practical, a demonstration of that commitment to justice and peace in a really difficult region. The report also mentions a review of the church's commercial operations in Israel.
Oh, the hotels.
The Scots House Hotel and the Scots Hotel, yeah. They're owned by the church. They generate income. So they're kind of reassessing priorities for, future engagement in that area.
Right. Okay. So those are some tangible ways the church is interacting with the wider world.
Yeah.
Let's shift focus inward now. Something probably on a lot of our listeners' minds here in Scotland. Membership. Participation. The numbers in the reports paint quite a picture.
They certainly do. As of December 2024, the official membership number was 245,000.
Okay.
That's a fall of 5.5% just from the previous year, 2023.
5.5% in 1 year.
And if you look longer term, say the last 10 years, 2014 to 2024, it's a 35% decline in membership.
35%. Wow. That really does bring home the weight of that question we started with about decline.
Those figures are, yeah, they're central to the concerns about the church's future path, its ability to sustain itself.
But interestingly, the report also shows how congregations are, well, adapting maybe. It says in 2024, nearly 60% offered online worship.
59%, yeah. And 24% offered other kinds of offline services, not just the traditional Sunday morning thing.
And they estimate participation too, right? Like over 23,000 people online.
23,145 estimated online, and nearly 2,475 in those alternative offline things.
So while the formal membership numbers are falling, the way people connect seems to be changing.
Yeah.
The church's reach might be different.
That's a really key point. Traditional membership is one measure, but congregations are finding new ways. That growth in online and alternative worship, it shows flexibility, a willingness to meet people, where they are.
Yeah, and it also mentioned about 1 in 5 congregations, 21%, reported having a new worshiping community in 2024.
Yeah, that points to potential pockets of growth, or at least new ways of being church taking root.
Different expressions.
Exactly. And related to adapting structures, we also see a lot of congregational unions happening.
Right, merging congregations.
72 unions were formed in 2024, involving 207 congregations originally. It's a clear sign of adapting to, changing populations, available resources, consolidation, really.
Trying to ensure things remain viable. And just quickly, what are congregations actually doing on the ground? The report mentions common activities.
It seems tackling food poverty and doing school chaplaincy are the most common things reported.
Okay, real community focus there.
Very much so. Interestingly, getting involved in political issues was the least common activity reported by congregations.
So that gives a little snapshot of local priorities. Social outreach, community support seem high. Maybe more caution around politics at that level.
Seems that way. Strong emphasis on grassroots support.
Okay, let's talk money. Finance, always crucial for any organization, right? The financial health piece is obviously vital for the church's future, its ability to do its work. What are the headlines there?
Well, the 2025 budget for the main church bodies, the unincorporated entities, it projects an operating deficit, about £6,060.
A deficit, okay.
And the plan is to cover part of that, $3,798, by using restricted funds, money set aside for specific things.
So dipping into specific pots to cover general running costs, that shows the pressure.
It definitely demonstrates the financial tightrope they're walking. It directly impacts what's available for mission, for ministry.
And it sounds like the assembly trustees are trying to tackle this head on, instructing presbyteries about congregations not meeting costs.
Yeah, the presbyteries, the regional bodies, they've been told to work with congregations that aren't paying their full share of ministry costs.
What's the aim?
To really encourage better stewardship, boost contributions within 2 years. It's a direct push for more financial sustainability locally.
Trying to get everyone pulling their weight financially.
It underlines that need, yeah, for congregations to aim for more self-sufficiency and for everyone to chip in to strengthen the church's overall finances. The report also mentions tweaking the rules around contributions, the Giving to Grow regulation, so they're adjusting the framework.
And the general trustees, they oversee all the property and investments, right?
Yeah.
Their role is key here, too.
Absolutely. And the report touches on the church's status as a designated religious charity, a DRC.
Why is that important?
Well, it brings tax benefits, but it also means the church has to show really effective self-regulation, high standards of financial oversight, governance.
So it's an advantage, but comes with responsibilities.
Precisely. Got to have robust internal controls, prove long-term financial health. Oh, and the report briefly mentions the Housing and Loan Fund, too. Still supporting ministry, helping with removal costs for retiring ministers.
Practical support, yeah.
A way of looking after those who've served.
Okay. Now, looking after the people currently serving, minister well-being, that's got to be critical. There was a survey mentioned, ministers of word and sacrament.
Yes, and the findings are quite mixed. On the one hand, a really positive sign. 80% of ministers said their sense of calling is just as strong now as when they started.
That's encouraging, isn't it? Despite the pressures.
It is. But The average scores for mental well-being were more worrying. A significant chunk reported scores indicating mild and even clinical depression.
Wow, that really underlines the spiritual load they carry.
It does. It highlights the real demands of the job.
So where are they getting support from? Did the survey ask that?
Yes. Family and friends came out as the strongest sources of support. Kirk sessions, though the local church councils were seen as only moderately helpful by quite a few.
That's interesting. The local leadership group not always perceived as the main support.
It seems so. And other things affecting well-being. Practical stuff. The condition of the manse, the house they live in, whether they have decent IT equipment provided by the church, even the Kirk sessions' attitude towards spending money needed for ministry work.
So those day-to-day practical things really matter.
Mm.
They can really impact how a minister feels.
Definitely. The report also mentions they're looking again at a national sabbatical scheme for ministers.
That sounds like it could be a huge help. A proper break.
It really could. Structured time away for rest, reflection, maybe some study. It could benefit the minister hugely and ultimately the congregation, too.
Prevents burnout, maybe?
Hopefully. The survey also flagged the high demands emotional, spiritual, intellectual, and ministers feeling they need better training in things like admin and managing staff.
The practical side of running things.
Yeah. And worryingly, a lot of ministers apparently aren't taking all the time off they're entitled to.
That's a recipe for trouble, isn't it? Risk of burnout right there.
It really is. On the positive side, continuing professional development, CPD, is being addressed. There's the SN service, support for those in their first 5 years.
Right, helping new ministers get established.
And there's a proposal to make CPD compulsory for those doing the new integrated ministry degree, the BDMDIV. And maybe study leave for ministers in their first 5 years, too.
So building in ongoing learning and support right from the start.
Yeah, acknowledging that ministry is, a lifelong learning thing. And structured support, especially early on, is vital for growing healthy, effective leaders.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Church law, governance. Sounds maybe a bit dry, but these things are the nuts and bolts, right? How the church actually runs. There are proposed changes.
Yes, quite a few. Proposed acts to amend the Commission of Assembly Act. That's about how the assembly itself works between annual meetings and the Church Courts Act, which deals with legal and disciplinary stuff.
Okay, updating the rule book.
Pretty much. And there's a big proposed reform of the Presbytery Mission Plan Act. This includes new definitions for when congregations are in serious financial trouble, even potentially insolvent.
Reflecting the financial pressures we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Adapting the structures to the current reality.
And it's not just laws being updated, but also the governing bodies themselves. A review of the Assembly Trustees' Constitution.
Yeah, aiming to improve governance, make sure it's clear, effective, fit for purpose, standard good practice for any organization, really.
Ensuring transparency and efficiency.
Right. The report also mentions the Presbytery Review Committee, outlining its role in overseeing the presbyteries.
Okay. And there's a potentially big change coming in how ministers are called to churches. A new act.
Yes, a new act for the call, election, and appointment of ministers of word and sacrament. The main goal is to streamline things, make it simpler.
Simpler than the current Vacancy Act process. People have raised concerns about that before, haven't they?
They have. This new act aims to clarify the presbytery's central role, define what the advisor panel does, that's the group helping congregations find a minister, and simplify admin, like sorting out the electoral roll.
How does it simplify the role?
It links it to another proposed act from the Legal Questions Committee about communion roles and adherence roles. So trying to join things up.
And notice periods for ministers leaving.
Yeah, the new act proposes a standard 3-month notice period if a minister wants to leave their current post or move to another one.
Okay, so potentially making a complex process a bit smoother, clearer for everyone involved. Right, let's turn to ethics. 2 big areas mentioned, investments and the very difficult issue of assisted dying.
On investments, the Church's ethical investment guidelines seem to have been well received. They provide clarity.
What's the core message?
They encourage all parts of the Church, congregations, trusts, everyone to use these guidelines. Big focus on climate justice, economic justice, peace and justice. And importantly, it includes excluding fossil fuel companies from investments.
So a clear ethical stance on where the Church puts its money. Divesting from fossil fuels.
A definite alignment of money with values there. Then, on assisted dying, this is a really sensitive one.
Extremely. And it sounds like the Church's position has shifted, or at least evolved.
It seems so. Historically, the Church of Scotland opposed assisted dying. But the report now acknowledges there isn't just one view. There's a range of theological perspectives among members.
So not a monolithic stance anymore.
No. They've produced a report that's meant to be a resource to help discussion within the church. It moves beyond just yes or no and recognizes that people can hold different views, both based on theological grounds.
That feels like quite a significant shift, acknowledging complexity and internal diversity on such a profound issue.
Okay, safeguarding. Always a top priority. What are the key points from the reports on that front?
Well, a safeguarding committee's core job is defined clearly. Risk management, continuously reviewing and improving policies to keep everyone safe.
And the practical side, checking people for roles.
Yes, the report explains the roles of the recruitment subcommittee and the safeguarding advisory panel. They assess applicants for jobs involving work with children or vulnerable adults, making sure all the checks are done, considering any past convictions very carefully.
What about challenges? Any specific areas mentioned? It does acknowledge the particular challenges of doing safeguarding properly within the international presbytery, different legal systems contexts, but it says progress is being made there. And the scale of this work, it's significant. In 2024, they processed nearly 1,800 criminal record checks, 1,791 to be exact.
Wow, that's a lot of checks. Shows the volume of activity.
It really does. The report also talks about reviewing processes for tricky situations, like when someone's found not guilty in court but concerns might still exist, or managing agreements, covenants of responsibilities, especially if someone has, say, impaired cognitive capacity.
Very complex, sensitive situations to manage.
Extremely. Balancing safety with fairness and individual circumstances. The bottom line emphasized is that Kirk sessions and presbyteries must comply fully with all the safeguarding guidance. Recruitment, training, everything.
Non-negotiable.
Absolutely. And they're also developing international safeguarding procedures, working with other churches, which is vital in today's world.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, moving towards mission and how the church acts out its faith. The Faith Action Program, what's that about?
It's guided by a leadership team, and underneath that, several program groups focus on different mission areas. One key part highlighted is the Priority Areas team.
What do they do?
They specifically support congregations working in areas with high levels of poverty and deprivation, helping them connect, providing training, pointing them towards funding, a real focus on tackling inequality.
And there's a new way into ministry being explored, an apprenticeship route.
Yes, that sounds really interesting. It's a new pathway for people thinking about full-time service or ministry.
Who's it aimed at?
It seems designed to widen access, maybe for people from different backgrounds or those who haven't taken a traditional university route. It complements the existing training pathways, trying to encourage more people to explore leadership.
That sounds quite innovative, inclusive, trying to broaden the pool.
Exactly. Oh, and the report also mentions the ongoing work looking at the legacies of slavery.
Right, that crucial work.
Yeah, a working group is being set up. The aims are clear. Phase the dialogues that have been happening, prepare a formal apology and acknowledgement, and importantly, outline concrete actions to address those legacies.
Facing up to history and taking action. That's vital. Okay, nearly there. The reports also cover updates from other church bodies, right? The Guild, Crossreach.
Yes, quick highlights. The Guild talks about its impact through project partners, relaunching the Young Adult Guild as LIF, various events.
Crossreach, the social care arm.
Huge impact reported there. They supported over 30,000 people last year. Loving service, they call it. Success stories across services for kids, people with disabilities, older folk, criminal justice work.
30,000 people. That's massive reach.
It really is. The Iona Community Report focuses on their theme, rooted in hope, lived in community, their justice and peace work. The church hymnary trustees give sales figures for the hymn book and supplement. And chaplains to the forces report updates, including on Royal Navy chaplains.
So lots of different threads, lots of activity across the whole church structure.
It paints a picture of a very busy, multifaceted organization. Definitely.
So bringing all this together now.
Yeah.
All these pieces we've discussed, ecumenical links, membership numbers, the money situation, minister well-being, law changes, ethics, safeguarding, mission, all the different agencies. It's a really complex picture, isn't it?
It absolutely is. The reports don't shy away from the serious challenges. Membership decline, financial strain, those are undeniable. But at the same time, you see this real energy around adaptation, engaging with tough issues, finding new ways to pursue the core mission.
Which brings us right back where we started, doesn't it? That central question. Terminal decline or potential for a miracle.
Yeah.
A real positive shift. Based on everything in these reports, it just feels like such a critical moment.
It really does.
You see the hard evidence of decline, the constraints, but then you also see these glimmers, these signs of potential renewal. The new worshiping communities you mentioned, the deeper ecumenical ties, the commitment to justice, adapting worship, changing governance.
Exactly. It's not a simple picture. And the upcoming General Assembly, well, it's going to be crucial, isn't it? A time for deep reflection, prayerful discernment, and some very important decisions based on all this information.
The reports lay out the facts, the context. The Assembly has to decide the path forward.
That's the task.
So maybe a final thought for you listening to this. As you reflect on everything we've covered, what does that miracle, that positive shift, actually look like in today's world? Is it just about getting the numbers back up?
Or is it something deeper?
Yeah, maybe it's also about transforming how the church operates, how it connects with the community, with the world, and maybe the biggest question of all, what role can individuals, communities play in actually shaping that future, whatever it turns out to be? Definitely a lot to think about as the church heads into this very significant General Assembly.